Will there be a European Space Command? Germany says there should be. We will discuss that and much more here at the Berlin Aerospace Show with Michael Traut, commander of the German Space Command. Commander, thank you very much for joining us.
Good to see you. Thanks for letting me join. Well, a European Space Command, which is for me a very nice idea, a very good idea actually, and I personally think that is a necessity. So Germany has realized the strategic importance of space since we have published a governmental document, our Space Safety and Security Strategy, last November. And one of the 65 specified tasks included in that strategy says that we want to set up a European Space Component Command together with our European partners.
So what has been the reception so far, and what would that European Space Component Command do?
Yeah, all right. Since space is really becoming more and more a warfighting domain. So we are under threat in space, so space operations are ongoing. There's a hugely increasing space population in terms of satellites, so 15,000 active satellites, and the number is growing by 20 to 50 per week. So we have a lot of actors there, we have a lot of activities there, and of course we do not have only benign activities there, and so we need to be prepared to protect and defend our space capabilities, and this only works in partnership because simply space is so huge. So actually our public reception in Germany, and you may have felt it at the ELA over here, so Germany and our public, our industry, and of course the military is really committed to set up substantial space capabilities, not only nationally, of course sovereign space capabilities, but in order to collaborate in NATO and bilaterally. And of course, if I may say that, we already have a very good relationships with some very good friends in the Polish Ministry of Defense and the Polish Armed Forces.
So at what stage is this proposal, and what is its final form? How do you envision this?
Well, we are at the very early stage of it, to be honest, because our strategy, which gave us the task to set something up like this, is only a little bit more than 6 months old. So we are in a very nascent stage of setting it up. We are already in conversation with partners, including Poland, on potential to set up a core team. Of course, mainly by some people of German Space Command, my unit, but with already from the very first place with international participation. So the next step would be to form a core team with people from partnering nations, from neighboring nations in Europe, and they would set up some concepts, and after that we will set up a standing structure, and of course then we need to get into training and exercises and relationships to NATO and relationships of course to other willing partners around the globe.
So it sounds to me like this is about developing our autonomous European capabilities, about enhancing security. So I would like to ask you, what type of threats are we up against in space?
Unfortunately, space is not a peaceful place. It never has been, by the way. We face a huge amount of threats, even in Europe and in Eastern Europe. So space-based services are interfered and jammed every day. You see that by jamming of navigation systems in the Baltics and in Poland as well. On the eastern flank of NATO, satellite communications is jammed or spoofed. We have interferences on our reconnaissance satellites, and then it's getting more and more kinetic or more and more physical and tactical. Satellites are chasing other satellites, satellites are grabbing other satellites, doing things with them, which we might not want them to be done. And even we have a threat of destructive space effects, like really destroying satellites with rockets from the ground, like Russia did in 2021. And we have even a potential nuclear threat in space, because there are suspicions going on that Russia might develop technologies which allowed them to place a nuclear warhead in space. And this is again even against the Outer Space Treaty. So we face a full range of threats already today, and we need to work together in order to protect and defend our own systems, our own capabilities, and in order at the end to deter a potential adversary to act against us in that time. So we see a full range of threats every day.
You mentioned a number of threats. I would like to focus on one in particular. The reports throughout the last months, if not years, that Russian satellites have been tracking European Western satellites. What is the danger connected with that? What are possible consequences associated with these tracking activities?
Well, those so-called inspector satellites, perhaps if you may call them like this, so they're getting pretty close. They're listening to the communications. They're getting some ideas on the capabilities of our satellites, and they're putting themselves in place to act against those satellites in a very short time frame. That's a question of minutes, if you are already in position. And that constitutes the biggest danger, actually, because your reaction time gets very, very low. And then you need, of course, to be able to react in that time. We never do the first step, of course, but we want to deny the first mover advantage as far as we can. So we need to prepare for this.
So what is it exactly that they can do within minutes?
Well, if you are already co-orbital with a satellite, it's a question of minutes to approach that satellite, to get close to it, to grab it, to interfere with it, and even to destroy it. And all these opportunities are open to somebody who puts an inspector satellite exactly in the same orbit like a target satellite is. And that creates a risk and a threat and a danger.
Recent reports suggest that one of the satellites that has been approached was an ICEYE satellite, a satellite by Polish-Finnish company, the data of which may be used by Ukraine, so, and in particular also aiding Ukraine's military. How dangerous is the interception of such data?
Well, we follow that event, so it's actually a stack of Russian satellites having done a very steep maneuver, and they all of a sudden ended up co-orbital with an ICEYE satellite. So we have seen some cases in the past as well between satellites of other countries and governmental satellites, actually. The novelty on the ICEYE satellite is actually that it's a commercial satellite, a commercial company, having, of course, contracts with several armed forces and several governments. And this raises the question, how do we protect our commercial companies and commercial space services so if they come under threat or under risk? And this is a new quality, actually, that Russian satellites chasing a commercial reconnaissance satellite, which is under contract with several military customers in Europe.
I was just going to ask that. Would you say that this is a new era of conflict then in space?
Well, it is a new quality, of course, and it reflects actually the nature of space, because almost everything you have in space is dual use. So it can be used for civilian or commercial purposes and for military purposes as well. But putting an explicit threat on a commercial satellite, that's a new quality, and we need to actually care for that and work on that. And of course, as soon as we need the services of a commercial provider for defense purposes, we need to talk to those commercial providers in order to make arrangements to protect and perhaps even defend them. There are legal considerations, of course, because they are not governmental or sovereign providers. And of course, there are procedural arrangements to be done, and that's an area where we actually working on in German Space Command together with our governmental partners as well.
Now we discussed Russia, but have you noticed any other countries engaging in tracking activities of foreign satellites?
Well, if you look at China, they successfully performed some very interesting maneuvers, even out at the geostationary orbit. Just to mention the SJ-21, which China took and to grab another defunct owned Chinese satellite or to put it out there in the graveyard orbit. And of course, last year they performed apparently a refueling maneuver between SJ-21 and SJ-25 out at the geostationary orbit, which is technologically admirable. That's a really, really advanced technology, but there is a potential, of course, for applying that technology in a kind of conflict or in a kind of war as well. So we need to consider that. And of course, we keep seeing very interesting and very dynamic maneuvers of Chinese satellites. I can't go into detail right now. However, China is setting up and exercising and demonstrating technologies of rendezvous and proximity operations, even in geostationary orbit.
It's interesting that you mentioned the graveyard orbit. It's something that I had on my mind, particularly with respect to Luch 1, the satellite, Russian satellite, which has also been accused or believed to have been tracking some Western satellites.
Yeah.
And supposedly Russia some months ago took it to the graveyard orbit, and afterwards it was destroyed following a reported collision. I was told by one expert that well, he believed, as I interviewed him, that Russia may have done it deliberately to basically deny our access to the history of that satellite.
Well, that's, I would say, a valid hypothesis. However, we follow those events, of course, very, very closely. So we had, of course, Luch Olymp 1 very high on our interesting object lists, and we followed, of course, the events pretty closely. We saw the movement of Luch Olymp 1, and we saw the fragmentation of Luch Olymp 1, and we see still the fragments going on, which is contributing to our space debris problem to a certain degree. And of course, there's much room for interpretation, since I don't have a phone number in Moscow to ask. I wouldn't go for any speculations, but I wouldn't deny that theory, actually. But there might be many other explanations as well.
We focused on security in space, but you previously mentioned also security, or the impact of space security on security on Earth. I would like you to elaborate on this connection, because I think even though for many people the connection is clear, I think for a lot of the public it's also still unclear and unknown. Yeah. Could you give some examples as to how these two are connected?
Yeah, space is actually something everybody of us uses every day. So if you wake up, you switch on the lights, and you put load on power grids. Power grids are controlled nowadays by precise time signals coming from space-based constellation. If you watch a weather forecast, the quality of a weather forecast wouldn't be possible without space-based services. And as such, many parts of our daily life, broadcast transmissions of the World Championships in America right now, or other things, many things we take as granted are provided and are possible only by space-based services nowadays. So I would argue that space belongs to our critical infrastructure. And that's not only the satellites, it's the terrestrial segments as well. You need to communicate with those satellites, you need to launch those satellites, you need to have access to space, you need to operate those constellations, and you need to exploit the data and the services which come down from space. So these are complex systems, and of course, as they belong to our critical infrastructure, like power, like water, like food, like other things, we need to protect that critical infrastructure, and we need to make sure that there's no easy interference, and there might be no sabotage and other hostile interference to that infrastructure. Hence, we need to watch all components of space systems in space and on the ground as well, and make provisions to protect them, and to ask even our commercial colleagues, how do you protect your own infrastructure, your own system?
Commander, thank you very much for shedding light on these important topics.
My pleasure. Thank you so
It was a pleasure
much.
to speak to you. And to our viewers, thank you very much for watching TVP World. I'm Sonia Gatavishan, and I invite you to stay tuned for more news coverage.